This video presentation is dedicated to the memory of Dr. Henry Clifford Kinley. As a result of the divine vision and revelation given him in 1931, the knowledge and the understanding of the Mosaic Tabernacle has been made known. The model of the tabernacle in this presentation was not constructed to show every minute detail of the tabernacle, but only to impart some of the basic understanding that we have been taught, and to give a look at what the tabernacle in the wilderness might have looked like. And Yahweh Elohim spake unto Moses, saying, Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. And look that thou make them after the pattern which was showed to thee in the mount. And Yahweh Elohim spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart, he shall take my offering. And this shall be my offering which we shall take of them: the blue, and the purple, the scarlet, the fine linen, the goat's hair, the ram skin dyed red, and the badger skin, shittim wood, oil for the lamp, spices for the anointing oil, and for sweet incense, gold, silver, brass, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. The first vessel constructed was the Ark of the Covenant. It was made of shittim wood and overlaid with pure gold. It was the only vessel in the most holy place. It stood 2 feet 3 inches high. It was 3 feet 9 inches long and 2 feet 3 inches wide. There are no measurements given for the 2 cherubims that were set on the 2 ends of the mercy seat. It had a gold crown around the top. There were 4 gold rings on the 4 corners for the staves that were used to carry the ark. These vessels were not to be touched. The mercy seat would lift up, just like a hope chest would. And it is in here where Moses placed the golden pot of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the 2 tables of the law. The 2 tables of the law, there were 3 laws on the one side and 7 laws on the other side. The next vessel constructed was the golden table of showbread. It was made of shittim wood and overlaid with pure gold. It was placed in the holy place. It was 3 feet long. It was 1 foot 6 inches wide, 2 feet 3 inches high. There were 4 gold rings on the 4 corners where the staves were placed to bear the table. There was a double golden crown that went around the top of the table. There were 12 loaves of unleavened bread on the table, 2 stacks, with 6 loaves in each stack, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. The priests ate of the unleavened showbread. The next vessel constructed was the 7-branch golden lampstand. There were no measurements given for its construction, only that it was made of a talent of pure gold. Oil was poured down the center branch and flowed out to the other 6 branches. The lampstand was to be placed in the holy place. The high priest would light the lampstand at 3 o'clock in the afternoon where it would burn around until 9 o'clock in the next morning. He would then snuff out the 7-branch golden lampstand, trim the wicks, and fill it up with oil. The next vessel constructed was the altar of sin sacrifice. It was made of shittim wood and overlaid with brass. It stood 4 feet 6 inches high and was 7 feet 6 inches square. There were 4 horns on the 4 corners where the high priest would place the blood of the sacrifices. There were also 4 rings on the 4 corners for the staves that bear the altar. The altar is where the high priest would offer up and burn the sacrifices and offerings that were brought before him. After the sacrifices were cut up and cleaned, they were placed on the altar, just like they were before they were cut up. There was always a continual burning on the altar of sin sacrifice. The altar also had a grading system where the priest would shake the ashes where they would fall down to the bottom of the altar. It also had a door that would open up in the front. This was a means where the priest would then take the shovel and go in and remove the ashes that had fallen, putting them in the ash pan and taking the ashes without the gate. The next vessel constructed was the altar of incense. It was made of shittim wood and overlaid with pure gold. It stood 3 feet high and was 1 foot 6 inches square. There were 4 horns on the 4 corners. It also had a golden crown around the top. It also had golden rings, 1 on each side. This is where the staves were placed to transport the altar of incense. The altar of incense was placed in the holy place. The high priest would offer up a prayer before the altar after placing the incenser on the altar of incense. It was a sweet-smelling savor unto Yahweh. The one unique thing about the altar of incense is that inside is where the garments for beauty and for glory were kept. Only on the 10th day of October, the Day of Atonement, before the high priest made his 3rd trip into the most holy place, he would change garments here. In opening up the altar of incense, we have here the robe, the embroidered coat, the girdle, and the ephod. Next we have the golden breastplate with the 12 precious stones therein. And the last thing that the high priest would put on was this blue ribbon that went around his bonnet with the gold inscriptions saying, "Holiness unto Yahweh." Here we have the 2 onyx stones with the 12 tribes of Israel, 6 names on each side, the embroidered coat with gold trims, the hems of the garment were the bells and the pomegranates, the breastplate with the 12 stones, and the blue ribbon that went around the mitre. Here are the 12 stones on the breastplate, 4 rows, 3 across, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. The blue ribbon with the gold inscription saying, "Holiness unto Yahweh." The next vessel constructed was the brazen laver. It was made of brass. There are no measurements given for its construction. It was placed in the court round about. Here's where the priests would wash their hands and their feet. And also, this is where the sacrifices were washed before they were placed on the altar of sin sacrifice. There was a spigot at the bottom where the water was drained out. The next item fashioned was the holy anointing oil. It was compounded after the art of the apothecary, just like the incense was, and was used to anoint the vessels and the priests before they could officiate in the tabernacle. There were other vessels and articles in the tabernacle that we don't often mention, such as chests that contained the oil, the ingredients for the incense, the spoons, the bowls, the knives, the snuff dishes, etc. Flesh hooks, shovels, and the pan. There were also tables where the high priest would cut up, clean, and dress the sacrifices. Now there were various kinds of offerings and sacrifices. Of the cattle, you had the bullock and the oxen. Of the flock, you had the sheep, the goats, the lambs, the rams, the ewes. Of the fowl, you had the dove, the turtle dove, and the pigeon. There were also peace offerings, meal offerings, sin and trespass offerings. The meal offerings, you had the grain, the flour, the unleavened cakes. Now the Levites, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, were set apart for the duties of the priesthood. One family of Levites, Aaron and his sons, were set apart to be priests. The rest of the Levites were to assist the priests. Their duties were for the care of the tabernacle. The low priest went in to do the service at the age of 25. The high priest could only be high priest from age 30 to age 50. The sons of Kohath were responsible for carrying the ark, the table, the altar of incense, the altar of sin sacrifice, the lampstand, and the laver. The sons of Gershon were responsible for carrying the curtains, the coverings, the hangings, the gate, and the door. The sons of Merari were responsible for the boards, the bars, the pillows, the sockets, the pins, and the cards. Now here we have the high priest after he had changed from his linen garments into his garments for beauty and for glory, which he did on the Day of Atonement. And he never went into the most holy place without blood, and also the incenser, where the cloud was formed. Here you have the breastplate of 12 precious stones, the onyx stones on each shoulder with the 6 names of the tribes of Israel on each side, the blue ribbon around his mitre with the golden inscription saying, "Holiness unto Yahweh." The hems of his garment, where the bells and the pomegranates were. And it came to pass in the first month, in the 2nd year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. Here, as we look at the tabernacle, we find out and know that the tabernacle was always set up facing the east. And as we travel along the fence of the tabernacle, this is the north side of the tabernacle. Going around to the west side, and now on the south side. The linen fence that went around the tabernacle was 2 layers of linen. The 3 coverings of the tabernacle was goat's hair, ram skin dyed red, and badger skin. The tabernacle was 150 feet long. It was 75 feet wide. The gate measured 30 feet wide. The fence stood 7.5 feet tall. The combined holy place and most holy place was 45 feet long. It was 15 feet high. It was 15 feet wide, and its 5 pillars was 15 feet high. The door going into the holy place was 3 feet wide. Here we've taken the coverings off so you can get a better look at the sanctuary. On the south side here, these boards, there were 20 of them. They were 15 feet high, and the 5 bars that held the boards, and they were set in silver sockets. On the west side, there were 6 boards, and they too were set in silver sockets. The poles that held the curtain that went around the court roundabout, there were 60 all total. 20 on the north side, 20 on the south side, 10 on the east side, and 10 on the west side. And they stood 7.5 feet tall. The holy place measured 30 feet long and 15 feet wide. There was also a blue, purple, and scarlet veil that went around the holy place with cherubs embroidered therein. The most holy place, which was always completely dark, it measured a perfect 15 by 15 foot square. Here, as we look into the most holy place, we see the Ark of the Covenant, where Yahweh Elohim said that he would dwell in a cloud between the wings of the cherubims above the mercy seat. And the holy place, which was 30 feet by 15 feet, the 4 pillars, which measured 15 feet high, the altar of incense, the golden table of showbread, and the 7-branch golden lampstand, and the blue, purple, and scarlet veil that went around the holy place. Here the altar of incense is where the high priest offered up a prayer unto Yahweh, and the incense was a sweet-smelling savor unto Yahweh. The golden table of showbread, where the 12 loaves of bread, 6 on each side, the golden rings and the staves to bear the table. The 7-branch golden lampstand that the high priest would light at 3 o'clock in the evening, and it would burn around until 9 o'clock the next morning when he would snuff it out. Here we have the brazen laver with his foot, where the high priest would wash, and also where he would wash the sacrifice before he was placed on the altar of sin sacrifice. Here we have the altar of sin sacrifice, where the high priest would put the blood of the sacrifice on the 4 horns that were on the 4 corners of the altar of sin sacrifice, and the 4 rings where the staves were used to bear the altar of sin sacrifice. Now here you have a overall view of the 3-compartmented structure of the tabernacle pattern. Now the operation and purpose of the tabernacle was a means for the children of Israel who were camped around the tabernacle to offer up of their cattle, the flock, or fowl, or meal offerings, a sacrifice unto Yahweh for their sins and for their transgressions. The priest would receive of them the sacrifices, and the priest would make the atonement. Now there was a daily administration that went on daily throughout the year without fail. And it started at 9 o'clock in the morning. They would bring a lamb to the high priest. The lamb would be killed, and the blood of the lamb the high priest would take and put the blood on the 4 horns of the altar of sin sacrifice. Now, after the high priest finished putting the blood on the four horns on the altar, they would bring the lamb to the high priest after he was dressed. The high priest would then take the lamb and he would wash him in the brazen laver. And after the high priest washed the lamb, he would then bring the lamb from the laver, and then he would then place him on the altar of sin sacrifice. He would be placed in the same manner he was before he was cut up. The high priest would then take coals off the altar of sin sacrifice and put them in his incenser. He would then take incense, 2 hands beaten small, pouring them on the hot coals, making a cloud with the incenser. He would then go into the holy place. The 2 low priests always stood by and made sure that the high priest carried out his prescribed duties. Now, once inside the holy place, the high priest would then proceed on to the 7-branch golden lampstand, which at this time, being at 9 o'clock in the morning, it would be lit. He would then snuff out the 7-branch golden lampstand, because the tabernacle, being that it was set up facing the east, the sun would rise and would light the holy place. So the high priest would snuff out the 7-branch golden lampstand at 9 o'clock in the morning. He would trim the wick, and then he would fill the lampstand with oil. He would then turn and proceed on to the altar of incense. He would place the incenser on the altar of incense, and here is where he would offer up a prayer unto Yahweh. And after he had offered up a prayer, he would then turn and go to the table of showbread, where he would partake of the unleavened showbread. Now, he did this daily at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 12 noon he would go into the holy place and offer up a prayer. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he would do the same thing at 3 o'clock that he did at 9 o'clock. Kill the lamb, put the blood on the 4 horns of the altar of sin sacrifice, wash the lamb in the laver, with his incenser, go into the holy place, go to the 7-branch golden lampstand, and at that time he would light the 7-branch golden lampstand, because the sun would be going down, and he would light the lampstand so there was never no darkness in the holy place. He would then go to the altar of incense, offer up a prayer, and then to the table of shewbread, where he would partake of it, and then come back out into the court around about. And he did this daily without fail. Now, on the 10th day of October, which was the Day of Atonement, this was the only day of the year that the high priest was allowed or permitted to go into the most holy place. And he went in there on 3 different occasions, and never without blood. He went in for his own heirs, for the children of Israel, and for the cleansing of the sanctuary. His first trip into the most holy place, they would bring the high priest a bullock. They would kill the bullock. The high priest would take the blood of the bullock, which is for his own heirs, and he would take hot coals off the altar of incense, put them in his incenser, and taking incense, 2 hands beaten small, putting them on the hot coals on the incenser, and making a cloud, The high priest would then proceed on to the holy place and then on into the most holy place itself on this first trip. Again, the two low priests standing by, bearing witness that he's carrying out his prescribed duties. And once inside the holy place, the high priest would then proceed on into the most holy place itself. And we want you to know that if it was not for the divine vision and revelation given to Dr. Henry C. Kinley, we would not have known how the high priest went into the most holy place. The high priest would part that veil on the right side, going into the most holy place, and going in on a cloud, he would come into the most holy place, and he'd put the incenser down, and he would move toward the Ark of the Covenant, and with his thigh pressed against the stave, he would turn the Ark of the Covenant, and with that blood, he'd flicker it toward the Ark of the Covenant 7 times. And he did this on his first trip. And after he had done this, he would then pick up his incenser and back out of the most holy place, never at no time turning his back on the presence of Yahweh Elohim, who sat upon the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. He would then come on out of the most holy place into the holy place. And he would take the incenser and place it on the altar of incense. He would then come on back out to the court round about. And as he come out to the court round about, 2 kids of a goat would be brought to him. One goat was to be the scapegoat, and the other goat was to be the sin offering. They would cast lots upon the 2 goats. And the lot that fell upon the goat that was to be the scapegoat, the high priest would place both of his hands on the head of the scapegoat, and he would confess over this live goat all the sins and the transgressions and the iniquities of the children of Israel, thus placing the iniquities on the head of the live goat. And after he had done this, placing the iniquities of the children of Israel on the head of the live goat, then that live goat, which was to be the scapegoat, was then led away by the hands of a fit man into the wilderness and set free. Now the goat that the lot fell on, that was to be the goat of the sin offering, they would kill that goat, and the high priest would take the blood of that goat, which was for the heirs of the children of Israel. And on his second trip, he would go on into the holy place, and then on into the most holy place itself with that blood. Once inside the holy place, the high priest would then take his incenser off of the altar of incense, And with that blood and incense, he would then go in on the right side of that veil into the most holy place. And once inside, he will put the incenser down. Remember, it's completely dark in here. And again, moving toward the Ark of the Covenant, and with his thigh pressed up against the stave, he would turn the Ark of the Covenant and flickering that blood toward the Ark of the Covenant 7 times. This now making a total of 14 times of flickering that blood toward the Ark of the Covenant. And having done this, he would then pick up his incenser and back out of the most holy place into the holy place. And once he comes into the holy place, he places his incenser on the altar of incense. However, this time, he does not come back out into the court round about. Because here, before he makes his third trip into the most holy place, he changes from his linen garments into his garments for beauty and for glory. And with that blue ribbon around his mitre, saying, "Holiness unto Yahweh," he takes the combined blood of the bullock and the goat, along with the incenser, back into the most holy place. And going in on a cloud, he sets the incenser down, and with the combined blood of the bullock and the goat, he goes to the Ark of the Covenant, and with his thigh, he turns it, and sprinkling that blood toward the mercy seat 7 times, now making a total of 21 times. This is for the cleansing of the sanctuary. And if he's carried out his prescribed duties as he should, and made no mistakes, then the high priest would see a vision of Yahweh Elohim sitting on the mercy seat with the flashing of the Shekinah. This signifies that Yahweh Elohim has forgiven the children's iniquities for that year and has accepted the atonement. Then the high priest would pick up his censer and back out of the most holy place. And coming into the holy place, he places his incenser again on the altar of incense. And with that blood, he puts that blood on the horns of the altar of incense. This is for the atoning of the heavenly hosts, or the angels. And having done this, he then changes back into his linen garments. And then proceeds on out into the court around about. Now the 2 low priests who were standing by, seeing that he has carried out his function and has made no mistakes, they sound the trumpets, letting the children of Israel know who were gathered around the tabernacle that Yahweh Elohim has accepted the atonement for their sins for that year. They would then bring a ram to the high priest. They would kill the ram, and they would dress the ram, and they would give him to the high priest, where he would take the ram, and he would wash the ram in the laver. And after the ram was washed in the laver, he was then brought to the altar of sin sacrifice, where he was placed on the altar and the ram was consumed. Now this completed the duties of the high priest on the Day of Atonement. Now we hope and trust that this presentation has helped you understand how the Mosaic Tabernacle functioned there in the wilderness.